We speak of burnout often in these times, a weariness of the soul, a fatigue that settles deep within the marrow of our being. Yet it is crucial to understand that this is not mere tiredness. It is not the simple exhaustion that follows honest labor, remedied by rest. No, burnout in its truest, most insidious form is a profound psychic erosion, a hollowing out of the self, a state where the inner flame that illuminates our path gutters and threatens to extinguish, leaving behind only ash and shadow. For certain temperaments, this descent is a particularly perilous journey. We speak now of the introverted intuitives, those driven by powerful inner visions and relentless internal standards. Specifically, the INTJ, the Architect of Systems, and the INFJ, the Advocate for Meaning. Their shared dominant function, introverted intuition, that deep, future-oriented perception of patterns and possibilities, gifts them with extraordinary foresight, but also renders them uniquely vulnerable. Their intensity, their drive to reshape reality according to their internal blueprints or values, can become the very engine of their undoing. While both the INTJ and INFJ navigate the treacherous terrain leading to burnout, their paths diverge, shaped by the distinct landscapes of their cognitive architecture. The intricate interplay of functions first mapped by the pioneering psychologist Carl Jung, the triggers that ignite the process, the symptoms that signal the inner collapse, the very nature of the psychic fragmentation they endure. These are unique to each archetype. Today, we delve into these shadows. We explore the specific ways the architect and the advocate succumb to the unseen erosion, how their greatest strengths become the catalysts for their deepest exhaustion, and how the structure of their very consciousness dictates their descent into the abyss of burnout. For the INTJ, the architect, burnout often manifests as the catastrophic failure of the system, both the external systems they strive to master and the internal cognitive system they rely upon. Their world is one of strategy, logic, and long-range vision, powered by the potent combination of introverted intuition, NI, and extroverted thinking, TE. Burnout occurs when this intricate machinery is pushed beyond its limits, when the elegant efficiency they crave dissolves into chaos. The triggers are often external encroachments upon their internal order, a persistent loss of control over crucial projects, forcing them to operate within frameworks they deem illogical or inefficient. Constant exposure to perceived incompetence, grating against their TE-driven need for effectiveness. Perhaps most critically, the relentless intrusion of immediate, trivial demands that shatter the focused concentration required by their dominant NI, preventing them from engaging with the long-term strategic possibilities that energize them. The modern workplace, with its emphasis on constant availability and superficial interaction, can become a crucible for the INTJ, overwhelming their senses and derailing their carefully constructed plans. As the pressure mounts, the INTJ's initial response is often to intensify their efforts, to retreat deeper into their inner world, seeking the single, elegant solution that will restore order. But when the external chaos persists, or the internal system begins to falter under the strain, the manifestations of burnout emerge. The strategic withdrawal curdles into stark isolation. Their auxiliary TE, usually a tool for objective analysis and efficient execution, becomes warped, turning into harsh hypercriticism directed both outward at the perceived failings of others and inward, gnawing at their own competence. They become trapped in obsessive analytical loops, their NI exhausted, unable to synthesize new insights, instead replaying problems endlessly, searching for flaws, anticipating failure. A profound cynicism may take root, a defense mechanism against a world that refuses to conform to logical principles. their already low tolerance for inefficiency evaporates, replaced by a brittle irritability. Paradoxically, as their internal world becomes more chaotic, they might attempt to exert control externally in unhealthy ways. Jung's model of typology provides a crucial lens here. Under chronic stress, the INTJ becomes susceptible to the grip of their inferior function, extroverted sensing, SE. This function, normally residing in the unconscious, erupts in a primitive, uncontrolled manner. The INTJ, usually future-focused and abstract, may suddenly become fixated on the immediate sensory world, engaging in impulsive spending, overindulging in food or drink, becoming obsessed with physical details, or even engaging in reckless, sensation-seeking behaviors. It is the psyche's desperate, albeit maladaptive, attempt to ground itself when the dominant intuitive function has become dangerously untethered. This say grip represents a profound departure from the INTJ's core self, a sign that the architect's internal structure is under critical strain, threatening imminent collapse. If the INTJ's burnout is the collapse of a system, the INFJ's burnout is often the fading of a sacred light, the exhaustion of the empathetic heart, and the disillusionment of the idealistic vision. The INFJ, the advocate, navigates the world through the profound depths of introverted intuition, I, but interfaces with it primarily through the warmth and attunement of extroverted feeling, FE. Their drive is towards meaning, connection, and the alleviation of suffering. Burnout arises when this delicate balance is shattered, when the weight of the world becomes too much for their sensitive psychic structure to bear. The triggers for the INFJ are frequently relational and ethical. Their auxiliary Fae acts like an antenna, constantly absorbing the emotional states of those around them. Prolonged exposure to negativity, conflict, or the suffering of others without adequate boundaries or processing time leads to profound empathy fatigue. They feel the pain of the world as their own, and eventually the burden becomes crushing. Furthermore, situations that force them to compromise their deeply held core values or witness ethical transgressions they feel powerless to prevent strike at the very heart of their identity. Their I envisions a better, more harmonious future, and the stark, often brutal, contrast with reality can lead to a deep sense of disillusionment. Feeling unseen, unappreciated, or misunderstood in their efforts to foster connection and meaning can also chip away at their resilience. As burnout takes hold, the INFJ's characteristic warmth and empathy may recede, replaced by a chilling emotional numbness, a desperate attempt to shield themselves from further pain. They withdraw from social connections, not merely seeking solitude like the INTJ, but actively avoiding the emotional stimuli that have become toxic. Cynicism can replace their innate idealism. Internally, a different kind of cognitive collapse occurs. Rather than the INTJ's Tay-driven hypercriticism of external systems, the INFJ often retreats into the infamous Nai-Tai loop. Disconnected from the grounding influence of Fae, their introverted intuition, Nai, and tertiary introverted thinking, Tai, engage in a destructive feedback cycle. They become lost in detached, overly analytical, and often harshly critical internal spirals, dissecting past interactions, questioning motives, their own and others, and constructing elaborate, often paranoid theories devoid of real-world emotional context. This loop offers a semblance of intellectual control, but isolates them further from genuine feeling and connection. Physically, they experience profound exhaustion, their sensitivity to external stimuli becoming almost unbearable. And just as with the INTJ, the neglected inferior function, extroverted sensing, SE, can erupt under extreme stress. For the INFJ, The say grip often manifests as an escape from the overwhelming inner world. They might engage in compulsive sensory activities, binge-watching meaningless content, overeating comfort foods, seeking intense physical sensations, or becoming obsessively focused on mundane external details. It is the psyche crying out for grounding in the tangible, present moment, however chaotically. This grip signifies a profound disconnect from their core intuitive and feeling nature, the advocate's light dimmed by an unbearable psychic weight. Though they arrive at the same desolate destination, the psychic wasteland of burnout, the paths taken by the INTJ and the INFJ are distinct, illuminated by the differing lamps of their cognitive functions. Both are driven by the profound power of introverted intuition, yet the manner in which this vision interacts with the world and the specific points at which their psychic structures buckle under pressure reveal a fundamental divergence. The INTJ's descent is often triggered by a perceived failure of order and competence in the external world. Their burnout stems from the exhaustion of the strategic mind, the frustration of logical systems breaking down, the inability to impose their rational blueprint onto a chaotic reality. The collapse manifests as cognitive overload, hypercriticism born of frustrated te, and ultimately the chaotic eruption of inferior say, as a desperate grasp for tangible control or sensory escape. It is the burnout of the architect whose blueprints are ignored, whose structures crumble. Conversely, the INFJ's burnout frequently originates from a crisis of meaning and connection. Their exhaustion stems from the overwhelming weight of collective emotion, the pain of empathy fatigue, the disillusionment when idealistic visions clash with human fallibility or ethical compromise. The collapse manifests as emotional numbness, a protective withdrawal of Fei, followed by the isolating, self-critical spiral of the Nai Tai loop. Their inferior Sei grip, though similar in form to the INTJs, often serves as an escape from unbearable internal emotional states rather than a reaction to external systemic failure. It is the burnout of the advocate whose pleas for harmony go unheard, whose capacity to feel becomes a source of unbearable pain. Yet, beneath these differences lies a shared vulnerability. Both types possess an intense inner world governed by Nai, demanding high levels of psychic energy and prone to detachment from mundane reality. Both struggle when their auxiliary function, the primary tool for engaging the external world, T for INTJ, FE for INFJ, becomes overtaxed or ineffective, and crucially, both find themselves ultimately overwhelmed by the eruption of their least developed function, extroverted sensing, plunging them into behaviors starkly contrasting with their usual selves. The abyss may look different from each edge, but the fall itself shares a common disorienting trajectory into the neglected corners of the psyche. Burnout, then, is more than exhaustion. It is an existential crisis, particularly for those introverted intuitives whose lives are oriented towards profound inner visions and the relentless pursuit of ideals or systemic perfection. It is the shadow cast by an intense light, the inevitable consequence of a psyche pushed beyond its natural limits. For the INTJ and INFJ, it represents a critical imbalance, a fracturing of the cognitive functions that define their very being. To navigate away from this abyss requires, first and foremost, a courageous act of self-awareness. It demands recognizing the specific triggers unique to one's type, the systemic chaos for the INTJ, the emotional overwhelm for the INFJ. It requires acknowledging the subtle, early symptoms before they escalate into a full psychic collapse. The growing cynicism, the withdrawal, the obsessive loops, the first flickers of the inferior function's desperate grasp. Recovery is not a simple return to a previous state, but a reintegration, a conscious effort to rebalance the psyche. For the INTJ, this often involves deliberately re-engaging their extroverted thinking in healthier, less critical ways, grounding their I visions with practical, achievable steps, and learning to consciously manage, rather than be overwhelmed by, the sensory world represented by C. For the INFJ, recovery frequently necessitates rebuilding emotional boundaries, reconnecting with their extroverted feeling in ways that nourish rather than deplete, utilizing their introverted thinking for constructive analysis rather than self-attack, and finding healthy outlets for the grounding energy of say. Understanding the intricate, Jungian-derived architecture of one's own mind is not merely an intellectual exercise. It is a vital tool for psychic survival. Burnout is a warning flare from the deepest parts of the self, signaling that the current path is unsustainable. By recognizing the shadows, the specific ways our own cognitive structure predisposes us to certain forms of exhaustion and collapse, we can begin the arduous yet essential work of reclaiming our vision, not as an all-consuming fire, but as a sustainable, guiding light. The journey into the self is fraught with peril, but it is only through understanding the darkness that we can truly learn to navigate by the stars. This exploration into the self, into the intricate architecture of our own psyche, does not end here. It is a continuous unfolding, a dialogue with the shadows and the light within. If the reflections shared today have resonated within the depths of your own experience, consider this merely a waypoint. The exploration continues. Join us as we further unravel the enigmatic threads of human psychology, delving into the archetypes that shape us, the paradoxes that define us, and the enduring mysteries that lie at the heart of existence. The labyrinth of the mind holds countless corridors yet to be explored. Until next time, continue the journey inward.